the alien princess heard a voice in the dark. It spoke his name. Shimmering purples blended with soft greens, and golden clouds floated lazily above the crystalline towers that reflected the light in thousands of tiny rainbows. From her palace balcony, Princess Lyra watched the horizon with quiet fascination. The wind, warm and fragrant, carried a faint hum that seemed almost musical. It was a sound the people of Zithra were used to, but to Lyra it felt alive, like it held secrets meant only for her. Lyra was young, not yet fully grown into her royal duties, but wise beyond her years. She moved through the palace with grace, her steps light on the smooth crystal floors, and her thoughts often wandered far beyond the boundaries of her world. While her advisors and family were busy with politics, diplomacy, and maintaining the perfection of Zithra, Lyra's mind floated elsewhere, imagining what lay beyond the countless stars she could see from her balcony. On this particular night, the palace was quiet. The usual soft hum of the city had faded into a gentle stillness. Lyra leaned over the balcony railing, her long hair flowing behind her like a silken ribbon. She had spent the day studying the patterns of Zithra's twin moons and wondering how they might look to a traveler from another world. She wondered what stories they would tell about the planets they had passed and what mysteries they had seen. Then she heard it, a voice. Soft, almost like the whisper of the wind itself, it called her name. Lyra, she froze, her hand gripping the railing tightly. It was not a voice she recognized. It was not one of the advisors, nor any of the palace servants. The tone was gentle and warm, carrying a strange familiarity that made her heart beat faster. She looked around, but the balcony was empty and the corridors behind her were silent. "Who's there?" she called softly, though her voice trembled slightly. Only the wind answered. Lyra's curiosity, which was as natural to her as breathing, immediately took over. She had heard of voices carried by the winds, tales of spirits that whispered secrets to those who listened closely. But this voice felt different. It was alive in a way she could not explain, as if it existed somewhere far away but had reached across the void just to speak to her. She stepped back into her chamber and carefully closed the balcony door. The room was simple, by royal standards, a place for thought and reflection rather than display. Her desk held several instruments for observing the stars, small devices that could measure light and sound in ways the naked eye could not. And there, on a small pedestal, lay a curious object she had found weeks earlier in the royal archives, a small, smooth stone that seemed to pulse faintly with light. Lyra had always been drawn to it, even though no one could tell her its purpose. Now, as the memory of the voice lingered, she felt certain that the stone had something to do with it. She picked it up, feeling the warmth beneath her fingers. The pulsing light matched the rhythm of her heartbeat. "Show me," she whispered, unsure if she spoke to the stone or to the voice itself. The stone's glow brightened, faint at first, then stronger, bathing the chamber in soft white light. A series of strange symbols appeared on its surface, glowing faintly before fading again. Lyra traced them with her fingers. The patterns reminded her of the star maps she loved to study, though they did not match any known system. She realized with a mix of fear and excitement that this was no ordinary stone. It was some kind of device, a messenger perhaps, or a key. But a key to what? Lyra spent hours studying the patterns, turning the stone over and over, testing it in different parts of the room, even holding it out to the balcony in the night air. With each attempt the glow responded, sometimes flaring brightly, sometimes dimming, always pulsing in time with the soft voice that seemed to echo in her mind. By the time Zithra's twin moons reached their highest points in the sky, Lyra was exhausted but exhilarated. She had begun to understand a rhythm, a hidden language in the pulses of light. It was as if the stone itself were alive, trying to communicate something important, something she was meant to hear. Then the voice spoke again. "Lyra, come to the stars." This time it was clearer. There was no mistaking it. It was a call, gentle but insistent. Lyra felt a shiver run down her spine. Her mind raced with questions. Who was calling her? How could a voice reach her from so far away? And why did it feel familiar? She paced the chamber, thinking. Her advisors would never approve of following an unknown voice, especially one from beyond their planet. It was dangerous, or at least, that is what they would say. But Lyra did not feel fear. She felt a spark of something she had never felt before, the thrill of discovery, the pull of something greater than herself. The next morning, Lyra was already at the archives, combing through old texts, maps, and records. She sought anything that could explain the stone, the symbols, or the voice. Hours passed as she studied, and slowly she began to piece together a pattern. The symbols, when arranged in a certain way, formed a map, not of Zithra, but of a distant star system that she had only ever seen in her dreams. Lyra's heart leapt. This was no ordinary message. It was a call to adventure, a path she could follow if she dared. She could feel the connection growing stronger. Each time she held the stone, the light pulsed brighter, as if urging her forward. In the quiet moments between her studies, Lyra allowed herself to imagine what lay beyond Zithra. She imagined vast oceans of light, floating cities and beings unlike any she had ever known. She wondered if they, too, were hearing the voice of someone far away, reaching out just as she had been reached. By the time the sun began to rise, Lyra had made a decision. She would follow the voice. She did not know where it would lead or what she would find, but she could no longer ignore it. The pull was too strong and the curiosity within her too great. She had always been told that a princess's path was set by tradition, by duty, and by expectation. But for the first time, Lyra felt that her own heart could guide her. That night, she returned to her balcony. The stars were brighter than ever, twinkling in patterns that seemed almost alive. She held the stone tightly, feeling its warmth against her palm. The voice came again, soft and insistent, calling her name across the dark expanse. "Lyra, here I am," she whispered back. The stone pulsed brightly, and for a moment, Lyra felt as if the stars themselves were leaning closer, curious about the small figure standing alone on a crystal balcony. She took a deep breath, letting the cool air fill her lungs, and closed her eyes. She listened to the voice, letting it guide her thoughts, letting it fill her with hope and wonder. She did not know what lay ahead, but she felt certain of one thing. She was ready to answer the call. In the days that followed, Lyra began preparing. She studied the patterns of the stars with greater care, experimenting with the stone, learning to interpret its light and rhythm. Each discovery brought new questions, but also new excitement. She spoke to no one of her plans, for she knew they would not understand. Only the voice in the dark and the stone that pulsed like a heartbeat in her hand were her companions. One evening, as she traced a particularly intricate pattern on the stone, she felt a sudden warmth envelop her hand. The glow expanded, and for a brief moment, she felt as if she were no longer in her chamber, but floating among the stars themselves. It was a sensation unlike anything she had ever known. She could feel the pull of distant worlds, the presence of another being reaching out across the void. Lyra's heart swelled with a mixture of fear and joy. She was about to step into the unknown, guided only by a voice she did not understand and a stone that seemed alive. And yet she did not hesitate. She could not. The voice called her once more, clear and gentle, a sound that resonated deep within her soul. "Lyra," and she knew that soon, very soon, she would answer. The night stretched on, stars shimmering like 1,000 tiny eyes watching over her, and Lyra remained on her balcony, gazing at the sky, listening and waiting. She felt the first stirrings of a journey that would take her beyond Zithra, beyond her world, and perhaps beyond everything she had ever imagined. And in the quiet darkness, she whispered back, her voice steady and full of determination. "I am coming." Lyra woke before dawn, the soft glow of Zithra's twin moons casting gentle light across her chamber. The stone pulsed faintly in her hand, almost as if it sensed her excitement. She had spent the previous night imagining the journey ahead, thinking of distant stars and voices from the darkness. Now, the idea of leaving her palace, her home, and stepping into the unknown filled her with both wonder and a little fear. She dressed quickly in a flowing outfit that allowed her to move freely. The corridors of the palace were still silent, the only sounds the faint hum of the walls and the soft whoosh of the wind through the high towers. Lyra held the stone tightly as she approached the chamber where the mapping device from the archives waited. She had spent days preparing it, studying the symbols, aligning its mechanisms, and trying to understand how it might lead her to the voice. When she activated it, the device came to life with a soft hum. Lights flickered along its surface, tracing lines that seemed to connect the stars above to a distant point far beyond Zithra. Lyra watched in awe as a faint portal began to shimmer in the air, like heat rising from the crystal floor. The portal was not large, just enough for her to step through, but it seemed to breathe with a life of its own, as if inviting her forward. She took a deep breath and stepped closer. The voice came again, clearer this time, guiding her. Lyra, follow the path. Her heart pounded with anticipation. She had no idea what awaited her on the other side, but the pull of curiosity was stronger than any fear. Gathering her courage, she stepped through the shimmering light. The sensation was unlike anything she had ever felt. She felt weightless, as if she were floating in a sea of light. Colors shifted around her, stars dancing and merging into shapes that defied description. A sense of calm washed over her, and she realized that the voice had been right. There was something wonderful waiting for her beyond the familiar skies of Zithra. When her feet touched solid ground again, she found herself in a strange place. The air was different, carrying scents of unfamiliar plants and faint metallic tones, like a city built from light and metal. She looked around and saw structures that floated in the air, connected by bridges that glowed softly. The sky was deep, a rich black sprinkled with bright stars, and a soft aurora shimmered along the horizon. And then she saw him. He was a human, standing by a strange machine that hummed softly, his hands moving over a panel of glowing symbols. He turned when he heard her approach, and his eyes widened in surprise. He looked young, with a kind face and a curiosity that mirrored her own. "Hello," Lyra said cautiously. "Hi," he replied, his voice carrying warmth and wonder. "I didn't expect anyone here." Lyra studied him carefully. His clothes were simple, unlike the flowing fabrics of her palace, and yet he moved with ease, adjusting to the environment as if he belonged in this strange place. She realized quickly that he was intelligent, observant, and perhaps, like her, curious about the universe. "My name is Lyra," she said, holding out a hand politely. "I'm Evan," he said, taking her hand in a brief, respectful handshake. "I think I've been waiting for someone like you." Lyra frowned slightly. "Waiting for me? How do you know me?" Evan smiled softly. "I don't, not exactly, but I've been hearing a voice too, or maybe it's the same voice you heard. It guided me here, and I think it wants us to work together." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. The voice, the same one that had called her across the void, was not just a mystery for her alone. Someone else had heard it, someone who came from a completely different world. And now here he was standing before her, alive and real. I don't understand," she admitted, "but I feel like I'm meant to be here." Evan nodded. "I feel the same way. This place, it's not just a destination, it's a bridge. Something wants us to connect, to understand, to discover." For hours, they explored the strange environment together. Evan explained that he was a scientist from a distant human world, sent on a mission to explore parallel universes. Somehow his journey had led him here, to this strange planet-like space. Lyra shared what she knew about Zithra, the voice, and the stone that had guided her. They discovered that the stone and Evan's device resonated with each other, producing pulses of light and patterns that seemed almost like a conversation between the two worlds. The voice was not random. It was purposeful, intelligent, and aware. It wanted them to learn, to explore, to bridge the gap between their worlds. Despite their excitement, Lyra knew they had to be careful. The Palace Council would never approve of her journey, and Zithra's laws were strict about interaction with unknown forces. But in Evan's presence, she felt a freedom she had never experienced before. For the first time, she realized that curiosity, courage, and intelligence could be her true guides. As they worked together, Lyra and Evan began to communicate through the devices, creating a simple system of symbols and lights that allowed them to share ideas instantly. They experimented with the portal, adjusting its energy to stabilize it. At first it flickered and shimmered unpredictably, but with each adjustment it grew steadier, more reliable. Evan laughed as the portal finally held a smooth, steady glow. "We did it," he said. "I think this is only the beginning." Lyra smiled, feeling a thrill she could not describe. She realized that the voice had led her to more than a new world. It had led her to someone who could understand the pull she felt, someone who shared her curiosity and wonder. Over the next few days, they continued to explore the area beyond the portal. Lyra learned that Evan's world was very different from hers. He described oceans that stretched farther than she could imagine, skies that changed color with the seasons, and cities built by humans that seemed alive with activity and creativity. In return, Lyra shared Zithra's beauty, the gentle hum of the winds, the way light danced across her crystal palace, and the quiet magic of her planet. They discovered something extraordinary together. The voice was not just a signal. It was a sentient being, an energy of thought and curiosity that existed between worlds. It wanted to connect civilizations, to share knowledge, and to foster understanding. The more they interacted with it, the more the voice guided them, showing patterns in the stars, messages in light, and instructions for stabilizing the portal. One evening, Lyra and Evan sat together on a floating platform, looking out at the shimmering horizon. The air was warm and fragrant, carrying hints of flowers that did not exist on Zithra. The stars above them sparkled like tiny lanterns, each one reflecting in their wide, fascinated eyes. "Do you think we'll ever meet others like us?" Lyra asked softly. Evan considered for a moment. "I think we will. This voice, it's not random. It's calling us to bring more worlds together. Who knows how many civilizations are out there, waiting for someone to listen, to understand, to connect?" Lyra smiled. "I never imagined that the universe could feel so alive, and yet I think I've always known it was." The voice spoke again, faint but clear, carrying warmth and guidance. "Lyra, Evan, you are ready." The words filled them with a sense of purpose. They realized that their journey was only beginning. The portal, the voice, and the devices were not just tools. They were a bridge, a symbol of what could happen when curiosity and courage meet. Lyra felt a deep connection not only to Evan but to the universe itself, as if she were part of something larger, something that transcended her small corner of Zithra. They worked through the night, adjusting the portal, testing its stability, and communicating with the energy behind the voice. Lyra found that each attempt strengthened her understanding of the device, her confidence growing with each success. She realized that the voice had not just guided her here, it had taught her to think, to explore, and to trust herself. By dawn, the portal was steady, glowing with a soft white light that filled the area with warmth. Lyra and Evan stood side by side, watching it pulse gently. For a moment they felt the vastness of space, the countless stars, and the endless possibilities that lay before them. Lyra turned to Evan, her eyes shining. "I think we can do this. Together we can explore the stars, learn from each other, and share what we discover." The voice, it brought us here for a reason. Evan nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "I agree, and I think the universe is ready for us too." As the light of the portal bathed them, Lyra felt a deep sense of hope. She had crossed into the unknown, met someone who understood her, and begun a journey that promised discovery, friendship, and wonder. She realized that the voice had not only called her name, it had awakened her spirit, showing her that the universe was full of possibilities waiting to be explored. And for the first time, Lyra felt completely certain that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Lyra woke to the soft glow of the portal still humming in the distance. The floating city around her shimmered in the early light, and the strange plants that grew here reflected the colors of the sky. She felt a quiet excitement mixed with determination. The voice had guided her this far, but now it seemed to expect more. It was no longer just a call, it was a challenge. Evan was already awake, adjusting the device that powered the portal. He glanced up and smiled as Lyra approached. "Good morning. The portal held steady all night, but I think we can improve it even more." Lyra nodded, holding the stone that had first guided her. Its glow was steady, as if reassuring her that she could handle whatever came next. "I want to understand it better," she said. "I want to know why the voice called us here and what it wants from us." Evan scratched his head thoughtfully. "I think it wants us to learn and to think creatively. It's showing us possibilities, but we have to make sense of them ourselves. The portal, the light, the stone, they're all part of a bigger puzzle." Together, they began examining the portal's patterns. Lyra noticed that the light from the stone and the portal seemed to react to her emotions. When she concentrated or imagined a shape, the glow shifted. Evan noticed the same effect with his device, though it responded more to logical patterns and sequences. They began experimenting, using a combination of intuition and reasoning to guide the portal's energy. Hours passed as they tested different arrangements, sometimes laughing at their mistakes, sometimes marveling at small successes. Each time the portal shimmered more smoothly, pulsing in perfect harmony with the devices. The voice whispered faintly during these moments, not in words but in feelings, guiding them subtly. At one point, Lyra traced a complex symbol on the stone. The light shot upward, forming a lattice of glowing threads connecting the portal to the stars above. The threads seemed alive, moving like a web of energy across the sky. Evan's eyes widened. "Look at that. It's like the universe itself is reacting to us." Lyra felt a thrill. She had always imagined that the stars were alive in their own quiet way, but this was more than imagination. The universe was listening, responding, and guiding them toward something greater. As the day went on, Lyra and Evan discovered a pattern. The voice was teaching them how to coordinate thought and logic, combining human reasoning with zither and intuition. Each pulse of light, each shimmer of energy, carried meaning. By paying attention, they could predict how the portal would behave, and even guide its energy to create pathways to other worlds. One evening, as the sky turned shades of deep violet and gold, the portal suddenly pulsed with a new intensity. Lyra and Evan stepped back instinctively, watching as threads of light stretched farther than before, connecting distant stars in complex constellations. The voice spoke again, this time more clearly. "Lyra, Evan, trust your minds, trust your hearts." Lyra felt a warmth spread through her chest. The voice was teaching them not just to control the portal, but to trust themselves. She realized that every challenge they faced was an opportunity to grow, to combine their strengths, and to see the universe in new ways. Evan studied the patterns, tracing them on his device. "It's like a puzzle that changes every time we solve part of it," he said. "But I think we're close to understanding it." Lyra nodded. "We have to keep going. We can't stop now." Days turned into nights, and nights into days, as they worked tirelessly. They discovered that the portal's energy could create temporary pathways to other worlds, small glimpses that lasted only moments but revealed incredible wonders. One glimpse showed floating cities with inhabitants moving gracefully through the air. Another revealed oceans that glowed with bioluminescent life, stretching farther than the eye could see. Each vision filled them with awe and reinforced the importance of their mission. One afternoon, Lyra noticed something unusual. The stone began to pulse in a pattern that neither she nor Evan had seen before. It flickered in rhythm with the voice, forming shapes that looked almost like messages. Lyra traced the shapes carefully, feeling a strange resonance in her mind. Suddenly, a wave of understanding washed over her. The voice was not just guiding them, it was teaching them to communicate with it directly, using thought, emotion, and intention. "This is incredible," she whispered. "It wants us to think together, to share ideas in ways we haven't imagined." Evan smiled, clearly as amazed as she was. "It's like we're learning a new language, one that connects minds across worlds." Over the following days, their bond deepened. They learned to anticipate each other's thoughts, to combine intuition and logic seamlessly. When one suggested a pattern or adjustment, the other could refine it immediately. The portal's energy became more stable, the threads of light stretching farther and stronger than ever before. Then came the first real test. The portal began to flicker unpredictably, shimmering with strange colors that neither Lyra nor Evan recognized. The voice grew louder, urging them to focus, but the challenge was greater than anything they had faced. The threads of light twisted and writhed, threatening to collapse entirely. Lyra's heart pounded. "We have to stabilize it," she said firmly. "We can't let it fail." Evan nodded, working quickly to adjust the device. "I've never seen it act like this before," he admitted. "But if we combine our strengths, maybe we can guide it." They began moving in harmony, Lyra using her intuition to sense the portal's rhythm, Evan using logic to calculate adjustments. The threads of light responded slowly at first, then more clearly, as if recognizing their efforts. They realized that the portal was testing them, pushing them to synchronize perfectly with its energy. Hours passed in tense focus. Neither spoke much, but their minds were connected in understanding. Slowly, the threads of light began to stabilize, forming elegant patterns that reached out to the stars. The portal pulsed steadily, its energy harmonious once more. Lyra exhaled, a mix of relief and triumph flooding through her. "We did it," she said softly. Evan smiled, equally exhausted but exhilarated. "We really did. I think the voice is proud of us." Lyra held the stone, its glow steady and reassuring. She realized something important. The voice was not just a guide, but a teacher. Every challenge, every flicker of instability was meant to help them grow, to strengthen their connection, and to prepare them for greater discoveries. As they rested, looking out at the floating landscape, Lyra felt a new sense of purpose. She was no longer just a princess on a distant world. She was part of something bigger, something that connected minds and hearts across galaxies. She understood now that curiosity, courage, and cooperation were more powerful than any force of isolation or fear. Evan turned to her, eyes shining. "Lyra, what we're doing here, it's just the beginning. Imagine what we can learn if we continue, if we explore other worlds and share what we discover." Lyra smiled, feeling a surge of excitement. "I can imagine it, Evan, and I can feel it. The voice brought us together for this reason. We're meant to connect, to understand, to explore." The voice pulsed once more, brighter and stronger than ever. "Lyra, Evan, you are ready for the next step." Lyra and Evan exchanged a glance, both understanding the significance. The next step was not just about exploration. It was about trust, about learning to work together in ways they had never imagined. They realized that the universe was inviting them to be pioneers, not just travelers. Over the next days, they continued refining their connection with the portal. Lyra discovered that her intuition allowed her to sense subtle shifts in the threads of light, while Evan's logical calculations ensured stability. Together, they could reach farther than either could alone. The voice responded to their teamwork, pulsing in encouragement and guidance. One evening, Lyra sat quietly, holding the stone in her lap. The voice spoke gently, almost like a whisper in her mind. "Lyra, you are growing. You understand the balance of thought and heart. This is the true gift of connection." Lyra smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She realized that the journey was not just about reaching new worlds. It was about learning, growing, and discovering the potential within herself and with Evan. They had already accomplished so much, yet she knew the adventure was far from over. Evan joined her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "We make a good team," he said softly. "I think the universe knows that too." Lyra nodded, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "Yes, and I think we can do even more together." As night fell over the floating city, the portal shimmered steadily, threads of light stretching toward distant stars. Lyra and Evan stood side by side, watching, feeling the energy of the universe around them. They knew that challenges would come, but they also knew that curiosity, courage, and teamwork could overcome anything. And as the voice whispered once more, calling them forward, Lyra felt a thrill of anticipation. The next step awaited, and she was ready to embrace it, knowing that together they could reach beyond the stars, discover new worlds, and unlock the secrets of the universe. The soft glow of the portal filled the floating city as Lyra and Evan prepared for what felt like the final stage of their journey. Days had passed since they had stabilized the energy threads and synchronized with the voice. Every moment had been a lesson in patience, curiosity, and trust. They had learned to read the light, understand the subtle pulses, and anticipate the portal's needs. Now the threads of energy stretched farther than ever, reaching distant stars in patterns that felt almost alive. Lyra held the stone in her hands, feeling its warmth. The voice pulsed gently, steady and inviting. "Lyra, Evan, the time has come," it whispered, almost like a breeze brushing her thoughts. Evan adjusted his device beside her, checking the energy flow. "This is it," he said softly. "I think the voice wants us to see what it has been guiding us toward all along." Lyra nodded, a mixture of excitement and calm confidence in her eyes. She had spent countless hours imagining this moment, yet now that it had arrived, it felt more wonderful than she could have hoped. They stepped together toward the portal, and as their feet touched the shimmering light, they were lifted into a world of stars, colors, and flowing energy unlike anything they had ever seen. It was a place that existed beyond the boundaries of time and space. Threads of glowing light intertwined with one another, creating shapes that seemed alive. Lyra and Evan felt weightless, their senses filled with the hum of the universe itself. Stars moved in patterns, and distant planets shimmered as if smiling at them. The voice spoke again, this time more clearly, resonating in every part of their being. "Welcome. You have learned to trust each other, to combine thought and heart. Now you will understand the purpose of your journey." They moved forward carefully, exploring this strange yet beautiful space. As they approached a cluster of glowing threads, the voice guided them to a particular point, where a structure appeared. It was not a building as they knew it, but a network of light and energy that seemed to pulse with understanding. Lyra reached out, and her hand passed through the threads, feeling warmth and intelligence within the glow. Evan followed, touching the network with careful curiosity. "It's alive," he whispered. "It's not just a structure, it's like it knows we're here." The voice pulsed around them, its rhythm almost musical. "This is the bridge between worlds. It exists to connect civilizations, to share knowledge, curiosity, and understanding. You were chosen to unlock it because you embody the qualities necessary: courage, empathy, and curiosity." Lyra felt a wave of awe. She had always known the voice was extraordinary, but to hear its purpose so clearly filled her with a sense of wonder. She looked at Evan, who nodded with equal amazement. Together, they realized that this bridge was more than a portal. It was a living library, a network of minds and energy reaching across galaxies. As they explored, Lyra discovered that by touching the threads with intention, she could send thoughts and images across the network. Evan experimented as well, using his device to translate patterns into understandable forms. Slowly, they began to communicate with distant civilizations, glimpsing worlds that had never interacted with one another. They saw floating cities, oceans that glowed with life, and beings who moved gracefully through environments that defied imagination. Each contact was brief but meaningful, a message of curiosity, peace, and connection. Lyra felt a surge of joy. Evan, we're not just explorers. We're messengers. The voice wants us to help these worlds share with each other. Evan smiled, eyes shining with excitement. And to think it all started with a voice in the dark. Who would have imagined this? The voice pulsed again, radiating warmth. Yes. And now you have the choice. You may return to your own worlds, carrying the knowledge and connections you have made, or you may remain here, continuing to guide and connect civilizations across the stars. Lyra and Evan exchanged a thoughtful glance. The choice was immense, but neither felt fear. Lyra spoke first, her voice steady. We can do both. We can return but keep this bridge alive. We can teach others to reach out, to explore, to connect. Evan nodded. Yes, we can be the first link and others can follow. The universe is vast and curiosity never ends. The voice pulsed brightly, as if approving. Then go together, share what you have learned, trust in yourselves and each other. You carry the light of understanding and it will grow. They stepped back through the portal, returning to the floating city. Though it looked the same as before, Lyra and Evan now carried the knowledge of something greater. The threads of light from the bridge lingered in their minds, a constant reminder of the possibilities that awaited those willing to reach across the unknown. Over the next days, they worked to create a system for the portal to remain stable without their constant guidance. Lyra taught Evan about Zithara's intuition-based energy patterns, while Evan shared logical structures and calculations. Together, they found a way to maintain the portal and the network of threads even when they were not physically present. Lyra felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had always dreamed of adventure, but this was more than she had imagined. She had not only discovered other worlds but also helped to connect them, proving that curiosity, empathy, and cooperation could overcome distance and isolation. Evan turned to her one evening, the sky above glowing with the soft shimmer of Zithara's moons. Do you realize what we've done? We've created a pathway for civilizations to understand each other. We've done something that will last far beyond our lifetimes. Lyra smiled, feeling warmth in her chest. Yes, and it all began with a voice calling my name. I think that's the most amazing part. The universe speaks, and if you listen, incredible things can happen. Days passed, and they continued refining the portal's energy. Lyra discovered that the voice could respond to thought alone now. She could imagine a pattern, and the threads of light would adjust instantly. Evan experimented with more complex structures, creating temporary connections to distant worlds they had only glimpsed before. Each success brought new hope and inspiration. One evening, as they watched the aurora-like glow above the floating city, Lyra felt a sudden rush of understanding. The voice spoke, but this time it was not just guidance. It was gratitude. Lyra, Evan, you have shown that curiosity, cooperation, and empathy are the true bridges of the universe. You have proven that intelligence combined with heart can create harmony across worlds. Lyra felt tears in her eyes. She had never felt so complete, so connected to something larger than herself. She looked at Evan, who shared the same expression of awe and joy. Together, they knew that their journey had not only changed them but had begun to change the universe. Evan laughed softly, a sound full of wonder. We've done it, we've really done it, and the best part, we've only just begun. Lyra nodded, holding the stone close. The bridge will grow, more worlds will join. And perhaps, one day, every civilization will understand that connection and cooperation are stronger than fear and isolation. The portal pulsed gently in response, threads of light stretching farther, reaching out like fingers touching distant stars. Lyra and Evan realized that the bridge was alive, constantly expanding, and they were part of its growth. Every connection, every message, every act of understanding strengthened it. They spent days sending messages of peace, curiosity, and shared knowledge to the worlds they could reach. They discovered civilizations that had never known life beyond their skies, and yet responded with joy and wonder. Lyra felt a deep sense of fulfillment as she watched their lights join the network, adding new colors and patterns to the glowing threads. Evan experimented with creating temporary spaces within the portal, small places where beings from different worlds could meet, communicate, and share ideas. Lyra helped guide them, teaching empathy and understanding, and together they watched as the first meetings took place. Words, symbols, and images passed between worlds, creating bonds that had never existed before. One evening, Lyra and Evan sat together, watching the threads of light pulse and shimmer with activity. Lyra felt a deep sense of peace. "We have answered the voice," she said softly. "And in doing so, we've learned that courage, curiosity, and cooperation can truly change the universe." Evan nodded. "Yes, and we've shown that even a single voice in the dark can lead to incredible discoveries. It only takes someone willing to listen, to explore, and to act." The voice pulsed one last time, a warm, radiant presence surrounding them. "Lyra, Evan, you have fulfilled your purpose. The bridge is open. The universe is listening, and the light you carry will inspire countless others. Go now and continue to explore, to teach, and to connect. You are the first, but not the last." Lyra held the stone tightly, feeling its steady warmth. She knew that the adventure was far from over, but she also understood that they had accomplished something extraordinary. They had crossed the unknown, learned from each other, and built a bridge that would last for generations. As she and Evan looked out over the glowing landscape, Lyra whispered, "The universe is bigger and more beautiful than I ever imagined. And now I feel like I truly belong in it." Evan smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "And so do I. Together, we've done something amazing, and together, we'll continue to do even more." The threads of light stretched farther than they could see, pulsing in gentle rhythm with the voice, the portal, and their hearts. Lyra and Evan stood side by side, ready for whatever new discoveries awaited them. They had learned that courage, empathy, curiosity, and cooperation could bridge worlds, hearts, and minds. And they knew that the universe was alive with endless possibilities, waiting for those brave enough to listen and explore. As the glow of Zithra's moons shimmered over the floating city, Lyra whispered one final thought to the stars, her voice calm and full of wonder. "Thank you for calling my name." And somewhere across the infinite reaches of space, the voice pulsed gently in response, carrying a promise of discovery, connection, and hope for all who dared to follow it. The alien princess heard a voice in the dark. It spoke his name.